Will an Ethernet splitter work? I have a room with only one Ethernet cable going there, but I would like to connect 2 devices on it. Is an Ethernet splitter suitable for that? I am talking about something like this. In theory, it should work like an Ethernet hub, which only amplifies the signal, but send it to all clients, like a splitter would. I've never used it, so I need confirmation that it work or not before I'll buy it.
It's useful to understand what a splitter does. It turns one 8-strand Ethernet cable into what would be, essentially, a pair of substandard 4-strand cables that in theory should do fast Ethernet, 100 base T TX. Practically, this might drop down to 10 base T speeds, and you need to use a splitter on both ends for it to work. It will take up 2 Ethernet ports on the far end. It will absolutely not work for gigabit, 1000 base Ethernet, as that requires all 8 strands. A hub and a switch are very different things. A hub takes in data and retransmits it to all the ports, and I've never seen a fast Ethernet hub, let alone gigabit. A switch takes in data and switches packets only where they need to go, which is faster and more secure. This, well, is a fairly dumb device that turns one cable into 2. In theory it should work like an Ethernet hub, which only amplifies signal, but send it to all clients like a splitter would. I've never used it, so I need confirmation that it work or not before I'll buy it. Your theory is wrong, and what you really need is a switch.
TLDR. Buy a switch. Do not use Ethernet splitters, ever. Midland posted a link to this schematic. Parallel wired means that if you use a device like that, at best you will get a load of packet collisions because you have wired the 2 computers, jacks 1 and 2, TX pins, pair 3, pins 1 and 2, together, and the RX, pair 2, pins 3 and 6, pins together. Ethernet wiring. Twisted pair Ethernet, 10 base T, 100 base TX, 1000 bast T, etc. all need to be connected end-to-end. At each there is a transmission, TX, pair, and reception, RX, pair. This is how a crossover cable works. Indeed, the simplest Ethernet network using twisted pair media is using a crossover cable between 2 computers. As you can see, the TX pins on computer A are wired to the RX pins on computer B, and similarly, the RX pins on computer A are wired to the TX pins on computer B. For simplicity's sake, I have not wired up pins for 5, 7 and 8, but for completeness they should be wired straight through pin 4 to 4, 5 to 5, etc. What your Ethernet splitter is doing is just adding in a computer C beside computer B, so that computer B and C's pins are wired together, pin 1 to pin 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 3, etc. At best, your devices will not work, at worst you will damage your Ethernet ports. Computer A could in fact be a hub or a switch, but you still have the problem of computer BS and computer CS TX and RX ports being wired together. Here is a wiring diagram for a simple, passive/unpowered Ethernet hub. This URL. Ethernet is a digital signal, and it is not like an analog telephone signal where you can use a splitter to add in another extension. Each little wave pattern is a packet of information that is transmitted from a TX port that is intended to go a RX port. Wiring TX ports together is going to cause all sorts of weirdness. Instead of a splitter, your best option is to add a mini switch, but you need to be careful with your wiring topology if you already have multiple other switches in your network. There were other search results which mapped the 2 unused pairs, 1 and 4, on 100 base TX to pins on 1, 2, 3 and 6 on the second port, so you would have to use these devices on each end. However, the Ethernet wire protocol has been designed to use twisted pairs in such a way that crosstalk is eliminated between the wires. Start doing non-standard, non-compliant things, and you will end up getting non-standard, non-compliant, unexpected results.
Some background. A router or a switch connect to different devices. One device per cable. Ethernet cables usually have 8 wires in them, and for 10 and 100 Mbit connections only 4 are used. For specific ones with well-defined twist rates in the cable. Splitters. Best guess on that these do, depending on splitters I have seen in the past. Ethernet cable has 8 wires. Sub-gigabit Ethernet only needs 4. If we want to do ugly things, then we can try to use one 8-wire cable as 2 4-wire cables. This most likely will run your cable out of spec and the connection may be unreliable. Note that these is no communication between the 2 NICs on the left side. The only reason to do this is if you really need 2 different physical connections and only have 1 cable. It is an emergency kludge. At least one cable's connection is out of spec. It is not compatible with gigabit. It is not guaranteed to work, though if you drop to 10-bit it often will. In almost all situations the right answer is to use a hub or a switch.
Notice your image shows 2 splitters. That's because these adapters are used exclusively in pairs. You will need 2 ports on your switching device, and 2 cables to this splitter, the combiner, then 1 cable onwards through the walls. In your room you have 1 cable from the wall to the back of the splitter, then 1 cable to each device. In contrast, if you put in a switch you would be neater and closer to best practice. These splitters don't carry gigabit at all, and some of them can fail to negotiate 100 Mbit. Also, they won't negotiate PoE either. As an alternative, can you run more cable in the wall? Use the existing wire as a draw cord for several lengths. This is why overdoing cable runs is a good idea when the wall linings are open.
Depends upon what you are trying to do. If you are trying to connect 2 separate machines though Ethernet to the modem/router, then you would need a switch network. But a hub will just connect the 2 machines to each other and relay the same packets over and over, not achieving much. Short and sweet. No, an Ethernet splitter will not work for your purpose. Use a switch. They can be a little expensive,